spoken about an album that I thought I'd done, and I looked through the channel and I can't find where I've spoken about it, and I also don't remember ever actually speaking about it. So we're doing it today. It's coming up for 10 years now since this album came out. It's a soundtrack. It's the score, the original score to Over the Garden Wall, the Cartoon Network series. Very, very interesting show. It's sort of a... It's all 10-minute shorts, and there's 10 episodes, 11 if you sort of count the kind of sort of like extra sort of bonus episode, and maybe 12 if you count the sort of pilot kind of short thing. But it's essentially a film, and this is the original soundtrack to that film. It's all composed by a company or a group called the Blasting Company, and they're this sort of like traveling sort of folk group. They started out in sort of Tennessee. As this kind of like essentially this kind of like bunch of random people who all sort of played music, and for a long time they sort of just travelled around and never had any sort of fixed abode. These days, with the sort of success that they've had after things like this, they kind of have sort of permanent residence in California, and they sort of, I believe they kind of play like certain spaces sort of like every week kind of thing, and they sort of then take on gigs and different bits and pieces, like doing soundtracks and whatnot. But this is a very, very interesting soundtrack, and it fits the show perfectly. If you've never watched it, it's kind of a what in the West we would call sort of like a portal fantasy, sort of like an Alice in Wonderland kind of vibe, or if you're familiar with like manga and isekai, and it's kind of got this kind of Southern Gothic, early to mid-century kind of American folky kind of vibe to it. There's a lot of horror in it, and it's weird because the setting is like completely different, and the kind of the tonality is quite different, and the story has nothing to do with it. But it kind of reminds me of Twin Peaks. It's sort of like Twin Peaks for kids in a way. I could be, I may be alone in thinking that, but it kind of just, it fills me with the same sort of feelings. So if you like that kind of vibe, definitely check out this program, because it's really, really creative, and I'd say it's one of the best animated things we've had sort of in the past sort of like 20 or so years, and especially the fact that it can be viewed as a film. But yeah, so this is the soundtrack to that. This is a Mondo release from 2016. Or possibly 2017. I forget exactly when it actually ended up coming out. I know that I ordered it in 2016, but it took forever to arrive because it had to be delivered from the US. So it might have arrived in 2017. But all the same, we're essentially coming up to sort of like the 10th anniversary of the soundtrack. Like, I think the initial official release date. And this is a lovely sort of like gatefold piece here. It is actually just a single vinyl. But the sort of presentation of it is so nice. You've got this sort of lovely, slightly embossed kind of piece there. I won't delve too deep into the story, but it is story relevant. Really, really nicely sort of crafted art. And the LP itself is a really cool splatter. This sort of orange and yellow splatter with what I think is a very cool B-side label. I love how that looks. I think that kind of... There's sort of an element of horror across all of their sort of artwork. There's something slightly off, slightly quirky, which really lends itself well. So yeah, the actual soundtrack itself, as I say, it's all composed by this one group, the Blasting Company, and they have that kind of folksy, Southern Gothic, sort of slightly jazzy kind of vibe. They've got that down pat. Like, it is essentially perfect for that sort of sound. It's so on brand, but there's a lot of quirkiness. They have tons of like funny, silly little songs in here, very, very short songs as well. Just looking at it, the longest song on here is 2 minutes and 18 seconds, I think. Yeah, 2 minutes 18 seconds is the longest track, so nothing gets the chance to sort of overstay its welcome. And so you've got fun tracks, you've got creepy tracks, you've got soulful tracks, and it really just, it goes perfectly hand in hand with the show. And even the sort of soulful tracks, there's an element of sadness. There's sort of an undertone of horror to it, which again, if you see the show, there is that kind of unease throughout the entire thing, even before you kind of know what's going on. So the way it's composed, the actual music itself really lends itself perfectly to the narrative, which is something I've sort of brought up before with certain soundtracks and stuff. The sort of recording of it as well, the way that it's all actually been put to tape is beautiful. It sounds immaculate, but really rich and warm. There's a lot of clarinet, there's a lot of cello, a lot of double bass, a lot of horn work going on, piano as well. It's got kind of a dusty feel, but it doesn't feel like it's badly recorded. So you kind of get the vibe of that kind of era that they're trying to emulate without it being a low quality recording. It's a perfect balance in my opinion. And yeah, I highly recommend you check this out. In terms of getting hold of a copy of this, it can be quite difficult. This has been reissued a couple of times, I believe, by Mondo, but even with the sort of reissues and the extra bits and pieces, you're still looking at around £100 or so to pick up a copy. But as I've mentioned in the past, this really is an album that lends itself so well to being played on a turntable. You know, it sounds great in any format, but this kind of music, this genre, this sound, there's something about it being played on this. And funnily enough, actually, Elijah Wood, who plays one of the main characters in the show, he said the soundtrack is something that should have been, you know, it would have been played on a phonograph. And he's like dead on the money with that. Like, it sounds so true to that kind of vibe. So yeah, if you can get hold of a copy, I really recommend it. Finally, in there, very small thing that I've never seen anyone do before. Certainly not sort of this kind of larger scale kind of production, but obviously you've got kind of like an inner sort of booklet, but they actually call it a program, as if you were sort of watching like a stage production or something. You've got the sort of credits of the vocals and the performers and things like that, acknowledgements, etc. Then you have a sheet music section, and it's sort of a rundown of some of the bigger tracks on the album, the actual full music, the full staves and everything, which I really love that. That's such a cool thing to have. You've got the lyric sheets as well, full lyrics for the album, and you know, I'd say it's sort of a 50-50 of vocal tracks and instrumental tracks. There's 32 songs on here. There's also an extended version out there, like on other services or other formats, where I think there's another sort of 8 or so tracks. But yeah, the standout ones on here, instrumental wise, I would personally say my favourite is probably Endicott Manor. That is a really creepy track. But it's one of those ones, it's kind of hiding in plain sight. There's nothing inherently creepy about it, but you kind of know that there's something wrong with it. And as far as the vocal tracks goes, it's got to be Patient is the Night, track 5 on side A. That was kind of the song that sold me on buying the entire album. The sound of it, the vocals, that rich vocal. The credit for it is Chris Isaak. I don't believe it's the same Chris Isaak that we all know. But yeah, the vocal performance on that track, as well as all the others, but that one in particular, that there is a richness to those vocals in the recording of it that I don't think there is a single vocal recording I can think of that quite matches how deep and like just how amazing it sounds. It's hard to put exactly into words, but when you listen to it, you'll get it. It feels so intimate, but so loud and clear. It's excellent. So yeah, that is a song to check out. If you check out nothing else, Patient is the Night is the one to give a go. And as I said, the whole soundtrack is amazing. The whole program, the whole show is amazing. Definitely check it out. If you've got sort of an hour and a half, 2 hours of your time available, this is a really easy one to kind of find on streaming services to watch the program. And if you can get hold of a copy after you've watched it, I highly recommend it. It's a lovely little package and it's a fantastic soundtrack.